like the leaks were right. All that talk, but they got no bite. They swore they were building something tight. Now the world sees through your hype. Looks like the leaks were right. All that talk, but they got no bite. They swore they were building something tight. Now the world sees through your hype. Looks like the leaks were right.
Do you remember this game? I didn't remember this game, and I made a music video about it. That's how bad it got for me, but you know who didn't forget about it? Neil Druckman, and he's kind of obsessed with this whole concept, especially after how sour things went with The Last of Us 2. Apparently that's still on his mind and is not going away anytime soon. Now, if you've never heard Neil Druckman before, it's going to surprise you how limp-wristed he sounds, given how many companies he's started and how prominent he is in gaming.
Been on this project at Naughty Dog for 4 years now.
So he can't even, like, pronounce the company's name. Naughty Dog. It's Naughty Dog. Can't even say Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog. Can't do it. It's Naughty Dog. It's not even... It's complete soy, limp-wristed stuff.
We just announced it. It's called Intergalactic The Herectic Profit. It's our venture into more sci-fi stuff.
Okay, and so when he says sci-fi, he's leaning more out of the survival horror of what the sci-fi was with The Last of Us and Last of Us 2, and into more of the space sci-fi stuff, like the I wouldn't say hard science fiction because it's not. It's just sort of glorified 80s tech, and a bunch of brands decided to get in on it because, whoa, Naughty Dog, we all want to be part of Naughty Dog. Got to get that brand placement.
What kind of sci-fi? Like, I mean, obviously I know you.
So I don't know who this guy is, but he's quite surly, and I'm not sure it's justified for him to be so surly, but he's very dismissive of consumers, okay? He's the average guy, looks maybe like a fella that's surprised to get this kind of interview, but also there's a Sony logo up in the corner, so he's probably bought and paid for. Again, I don't know who this guy is. To me, he fell out of the sky. I've never seen him before.
But is it like, you talking deep space? Are you talking about, is it Earthbound?
It's not Earthbound. It takes place 2,000 years in an alternate future that deviates in the late 80s. Okay,
so to be clear, he's talking about the year 2000, and much like how the retrofuturism of Fallout, it's just Fallout in space, okay? Instead of bottle caps, you get CDs from the early 90s, okay? From the mid-90s, all right? It's as though the cultural and scientific aesthetic stuck with the 80s. So all the technological advancement stayed stunted in 1988, particularly 1988. So everything that you saw at that time period that was in that trailer is going to be repeated throughout the entire game. It's not just this pilot and her own personal setup is locked in the 80s. It's the entire technology of this world.
Wow.
Let's just go back and listen to this, okay?
There's an alternate future that deviates in the late 80s.
Wow. I mean, that's my reaction, right? I mean, I just want to highlight that.
2,000 years in an alternate future that deviates in the late 80s.
Wow.
Wow. I almost feel like that's a premise and not a complete explanation of like a lead-in or anything. It's just sort of, this happened and it diverted here. Wow.
And we spent like years just coming up with that timeline.
Why would you need to do that, Neil? Why would you need to do that? So, why would you need to do that, Neil? This is the question. Like, why would you need a timeline? Why would you need years to do a timeline? Because unless you're sitting down and you're trying to do like a Skyrim thing, where like there's all this background information that you as the player have the option to interact with, but, you know, largely most players do not. I'm the guy that went around and read all the books in Skyrim. You don't get an achievement for it. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm the guy that went around. I know so much about Talos and all of the gods, and it's just completely useless because who cares, right? Who cares? But much like this is, if he's talking about that kind of timeline, great, right? But why do that, Neil? Why do that? Because this game is not focused on that timeline. This game is focused on that bald chick and her friends that she thinks may be alive, but are most likely dead.
And it's dealing with It's funny. It's like I joke about this with the team. It's like, oh, we made a game with The Last of Us 2. We made certain creative decisions. That got us a lot of hate.
Wow. That game came out how many years ago? Let me know down in the comments below when Last of Us 2 came out, because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it came out long enough ago that I believe that children who may have been collecting Pokemon cards in middle school now have their driver's license, at least, since that game came out, okay? If not completely through college now and are unfortunately shackled to a, data entry accounting job. But Neil's not concerned about that. He's very worried about that time that a butch, weird, man-looking character beat the hell out of the dad figure that we'd all gotten attached to from the first game with a 9-iron. Yeah,
A lot of people love it, but a lot of people hate that game.
I'm one of them.
Who gives a shit?
I give a shit. But pay attention to that, okay? This surly man,
Who gives a shit?
I don't know who this guy is, but he seems pretty in charge. He seems pretty like, I don't care what your opinions are about anything. I have Neil Druckman sitting at this painted black picnic table in the middle of a shipping container, and we're going to talk about this weird game that I don't even give a shit about, but I'm going to expect you to give a shit about. But you know what I'm not going to give a shit about? You.
Exactly. So the joke is like, you know what? Let's do.
It's not a joke, Neil. You painted this father figure who had been tortured, had a horrible life, really had a rough time, found this girl. This girl's not so great either, had a pretty rough life. The two of them don't get along too great, but by the end of it, they have a semi-okay father-daughter relationship, so much so that Joel damns the entire world to an eternity at the clicker's reign, if you will, an endless infection of the spores, because he loves Ellie. He sees his daughter who was taken from him during the initial, you know what, play the game. Play the first game, right? Play the first game. Play the first game, Neil. Then you'll understand why people were mad about the second one.
Something that people won't care as much about. Let's make a game about faith.
You're right. I won't care about this game, Neil. You're right. I won't care about this game. Let's go back 5 seconds.
Care as much about. Let's make a game about faith and religion. So there is just we not only in this alternate history timeline we've made this where the timeline deviates, this new religion becomes pretty prominent.
Right, a new religion. How about that? Now, I want you to pay attention to how Neil describes this new religion and how our surly friend with the accent, right, that fella that totally didn't record the line, mission failed, we'll get him next time. You think he's that guy? Do you think he's that guy? Do you think he's the Price? Do you think he's Price? That's right. It was Price, right? That was the guy that would say, "This is Bravo going dark," right? That's the guy. Yeah.
And then we spend years just building out this religion of like from the original prophet all the way how it gets like changed and sometimes bastardized and evolves over all these years. And then
Really? How about that?
and like all these people from this
How many? You said 2,000 years?
2000
Coincidentally, 2,000 years.
Coincidentally, 2,000 years from a religion that started in the 80s. The 1980s, not the literal 80s, as in like 080. AD. Man, that's a tongue twister.
And this whole religion takes place on this one planet, and then at one point, all communication stops from.
Right, okay. And now again, you might be saying to yourself, man, this sounds an awful lot like those leaks that came out of 4chan that we were all told that were totally not real. That was fake, right? Not real.
This planet.
Nice.
And you're playing a bounty hunter that's chasing her bounty, and she crash lands on this planet. And it's and I really wanted to make a game about faith and religion, but also about.
So I'm gonna like cue you guys into some magician secrets about being an interviewer, okay? When you don't give a crap, I already said shit. So when you don't give a shit about this stuff, right? When you don't give a shit, S-H-I-D. How about that, YouTube filters? When you don't give a shit, right? You ask questions that have no answer to them. They're just sort of like statements that have a question tone at the end of them. And in this way, the person that you're interviewing isn't harmed and also not enticed to bore you any further with what they're saying.
About
this. It sounds
Just being
awesome.
lonely. So many of the
So this is what Neil is going to start getting into, okay? Now, do you feel lonely? Now, there's a male loneliness epidemic in the world. Now, what do you bet this game has absolutely nothing to do with that and more to do with the fact that Neil feels lonely, that nobody liked his idea of having a trans woman beat the hero to death with a 9-iron, right? Beat Joel to death with a 9-iron.
previous games we've done, there's always like an ally with you, and you're talking. I was like, I
Mhm.
really want you to be lost in a place that you're really confused about what happened here. Who are the people here? What was their history? And in order to get
So we wanted to do a game that doesn't have a plot or a story, but has a whole lot of drama to it. And then we're just going to dump a bunch of exposition at the end that loosely ties it all together and tell you who gives a shit if you don't understand.
off this planet, like again, no one has been heard from this planet for 600 years. So if you
600?
ever have hoped to have a chance to get off, you have to figure out what happened here.
All right. Now, what he's talking about there is that these are the plot leaks again. So if you have to, in order to get off the planet, right? Anyone who's ended up on this planet, right? This is the planet of the Simperians, and it is pronounced Simperians, by the way, even though it's spelt Semperfi from the Marines, the American Marines. And so again, like it's one of those things where they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, but they're also trying to point and laugh at you. So you can imagine this went around the thing like simp for Jesus. You bet that went around the office, and that's where they got Simperia from. Okay, but they couldn't call it Simperia, so they traded the I out for an E. You think I'm kidding? You wait. But already they're spelling that. Neil's spelling this out for you to be a critique of what is American Christianity, most likely, what he considers the Protestant religions. I don't know where Neil comes down on the religious scale. I don't know about what he worships and what he doesn't worship. What I know is that Hollywood, much like the gaming industry now, really likes to poke fun at Christianity. Now, you in the comments might feel like, oh, here we go. He's another guy for bounding into comics that's going to get upset about Christianity being a topic in media. No. What I'm upset about is the fact that this is not a critique of Buddhism going awry. You may not know this, but the Buddhists have been pretty violent over there recently. Bangladesh is a horrible nightmare of what's going on between the Muslims and the Buddhists over there. And it's not going the way you think, right? The Buddhists aren't just sitting around like, oh, what a loon I am. No, they're not doing that. They're actually doing a lot of the bangity, 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 bangity. They're doing a lot of that. They're doing a lot of that. But no, we don't talk about those guys. It's that fella there that got nailed to a cross that really ticks off people in Hollywood for some reason. And that's what gets under my skin. It's like there's so many other crazy faiths out there. Like there's some religion out there that in order to get married, there's some National Geographic series or episode about this. There's some religion out there where, like, in order to get married, you have to get your arms chopped off. I'm not kidding you. You can Google this. I don't know the name of the exact episode, but it's some National Geographic documentary that talks about this place, like one of the island nations near Indonesia or down there in the Indo-Pacific, somewhere around there. They have to get their arms cut off in order to get married. I have no idea what the thinking behind that is. I was too mortified by the visuals of all these guys walking around without arms. But no, we're not going to critique that faith. We're not going to critique that religion. No. Those practices, that's off limits. It's this guy that got nailed to a cross that we've got to keep going after. We got to beat that dead horse. And that's what gets under my skin is that it's like, what else, right? What else is there in the world? Like, are you aware of like all the crazy faiths that were going on just in Siberia alone? Like, look at all this stuff. Like, the Wendigo alone is its own private little religion inside of Native American mythology. When you understand what the Wendigo is to these people, there's a whole, like pantheon of different Wendigos and what they do and how they got that way. It's not just one, like, cannibalistic method. There's tons of different ways you become a Wendigo. No, we're going to go to space with Reeboks to make fun of Jesus.
There are so many questions.
Now, this is the magician's secret I was talking about, okay? So Neil's delivered all of this, right? So here's Neil.
Like, again, no one has been heard from this planet for 600 years. So if you ever have hoped to have a chance to get off, you have to figure out what happened here.
There are so many questions I could ask you, but I'm not going to.
There are so many questions I could ask you right now, but I'm not going to because none of this really interests me enough to formulate a question about what you just told me because my brain waxed over around the time you mentioned religion. You know, it's It's such a telling thing that they couldn't find anybody in the Sonyverse to sit down and take Neil Druckmann seriously. And so this guy is like, oh, I could ask you a bunch of questions, but I just don't want to. Now, there's a bunch of like ass patting that goes on here, but I want you to listen to this part from this guy because, again, he's just such a surly weirdo.
I would like to encounter that story knowing as little as possible. And I don't love the process of selling things because I feel one is diminishing it.
I've gotten in trouble actually because
Okay, so here's some little inside pool, okay? Now, again, like, we all know this, but here's Neil bragging about this, okay? So pay attention.
if trying to protect the story, we've released a trailer for Last of Us 2 where we faked a shot and we showed Joel somewhere where he would never make it to because of things that happened in that story.
As a deliberate...
As a deliberate way to throw off the scent.
As a deliberate way to screw with fans of the series that were expecting a continuation of the hero that they had aligned some of their beliefs in themselves about. A path to redemption, perhaps, from being a person who otherwise was not too social and maybe had some real rough stuff happen to him they didn't want to drag other people into the baggage of. How about that, right? Who would ever see themselves in a character like Joel? Who would ever hope to continue adventures with Ellie, who's a smart-mouthed young girl that you might hope to have a daughter like someday, who is likewise as smart-mouthed and independent and capable of taking care of herself? But whatever, right? Last of Us 2 came along, Joel fucking sucks, everybody sucks, Ellie's some weird caricature of Ellen Page still, and they're trying to keep up with that person's changes, he, she, wannabe, whatever it is right now, demons telling her what to cut her off her genitalia. But hey, back at the plot, Neil wanted you to know, haha, we got you. And look at him, he's so proud of it. Look at him.
Yeah.
And people that didn't like the game accused that of being false advertisement.
Okay.
Haha, we got you by falsely advertising what happened in this game. Poo-poo on you for calling it false advertisement, huh? Now, if you want to know more about these leaks, right, you can go on over to the video that's going to appear probably somewhere over there. I think it's over there. It could be down here somewhere. It's going to show up right about here. And you can follow that over there. That was the video way back in the 12th, way back in December, rather, the 12th month of last year. That's what I meant to say. But back in December of last year, and you can find out all about that. And the music video I forgot all about, by the way. So anyway, now you know Neil Druckmann hates you, and whoever this guy is that sounds like Price from the games, he also hates you. There's a lot of hate at Sony for people who pay their bills.